Welcome, everyone. We are here for the Let's Keep Talking series. The series is brought to you by the School District of Marshfield, Everett, Roehl, Marshfield Public Library, and MACY, which stands for Marshfield Area Coalition for Youth. And we've been during the school year doing, hi Linda, monthly educational series for parents and caregivers having to do with youth and the struggles that they have. So this is our third one this year, and we're going to talk about mental health trends for youth, and we're going to use the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And I'm going to present along with Nikki, and I cannot pronounce her last name, Lucht. How do you say that? Sure. Okay, so she's coming. She is the epidemiologist for the Wood County Health Department. And so we worked on this presentation together. And then she has some specific information about Wood County. So there we go. We're going to be talking about the 2023 Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And I know it's 2024, almost 2025. But how data works is they get it and they do all the stuff with it, and you get it like a year or two after you take the survey, and that's just how things work. So here are a couple things about the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that are important for you to know. It's administered every 2 years throughout the nation, but not every school does it. Schools get to choose to do it. The state of Wisconsin uses the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and so they promote it. The Department of Public Instruction really promotes schools to do it because then they can gather data having to do with our school youth in Wisconsin. So it's quite a measure in Wisconsin in particular. What that means is this is a comparison slide. So you're going to see Marshfield information, Wood County information, and Wisconsin information, but I don't have national information. It's hard to do comparisons. They just put it out about 3 weeks ago, so it did not get added to the slide because it's sort of messy to do the comparisons. I did, however, look at it. It's not so hugely out of whack that we would say, oh my gosh, we're so different than nationally. So we run about where people run. You should know that this is an anonymous survey, meaning kids take it, they don't put their names on it, it's not attached, it's done electronically at school, but there's no identifying information, so the kids can be as honest as possible. But we also need to know that the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is self-reported by kids. They can put whatever they want. Nobody is looking to see if they're putting true answers or not. But as I mentioned, they do a lot of data cleaning. So if a kid's survey comes and there's a lot of sort of wacky answers like all A's or like everything's one way or the other, they'll throw that one out. There is like strong science behind this survey. And parents can see the survey prior to it being given and can opt their kid out of it if they don't want to do it, and kids can opt themselves out of it. They don't want to do it. So it's sort of a free will kind of thing. So a little bit about the 2023 data. This particular data is 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade at the Marshfield High School. We also do 7th and 8th grade, but DPI has not yet released the middle school data, which is unfortunate because that really is helpful for us when we do planning as well in the school district. This one was given in January of 2023, so that's when I took it. All of the answers or all of the numbers you're going to see are percentages. Again, I said we get clean data, not raw data, so that's not what this is. This is cleaned data. And the next Youth Risk Behavior Survey happens in January, February, or March of 2025. So how do we use the results? So both as a school district and a community, we use the results in a couple different ways. Trying to understand what's going on with our students, recognizing our community needs, because this is going to tell us a lot. You'll see through some of the data, this is not just school data, it is really community-wide data and you'll see some needs having to do with that. It allows both the community and the school to do planning. Where do we need more services? Where do we need changes in our curriculum? All of those kinds of things. It also informs community decision-making at the health department. If we can talk a little bit about that, it's one of the data points that they use. Figure out where we need some resources. It helps us partner with people in the community. And I presented some of this information to United Way today. It helps local agencies be able to show data for sort of why they're doing what they're doing. So it helps with grant writing quite a bit because it is the nationally recognized data. It's not like we're just like counting kids in a class or something like that. This is, there's some good research behind this data. Okay, so generally, you'll see on my slide, in the slide presentation, we sort of go through some data and then we talk about, okay, so what are we doing as a community and as a school about that? But I realized those slides will get really, really, really long. So I did this first general slide. Hi, Nikki, how are you? We're not to your part yet. Sit down and relax. So I put this slide having to do with sort of, I didn't realize, it doesn't do that on my slide. My slide doesn't have that split, but that's okay. General interventions and responses. So these interventions and responses from the school district sort of apply to all of the categories that we're about to talk about, but I didn't want to have to write this slide, 4 different times, 5 different times for each of the categories. So these are things that are in general having to do with substance use and mental health and belonging and all of these different categories that we're looking at. These are some interventions that we do on a pretty regular basis. Ongoing relationship building between the adults in school and the kids in school, right? We do a thing called PBIS, Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports. And so all schools have initiatives that all at different places and how much they're doing of that, but there are some initiatives, and that really is teaching kids what the expectations are, and instead of a lot of punishment, more reteaching and rewards for good behavior and those kinds of things. There's a lot of professional development and training that goes on for school staff. This information is used when making curricular decisions at the school. We're doing this educational series as a response. We do newsletters, both building level newsletters, plus our student services team does a newsletter every month. And in fact, you'll see a summary of this presentation in the next student services newsletter, and that goes out to all parents and all staff at the school. So there's wide distribution of that. I cannot guarantee who opens it and reads it, but it does go out to everybody. And then just so you know, our student services staff, so SDOM, School District of Marshfield, student services staff, we have 10 school counselors, we have 6 school psychologists, 3 social workers, one of them being me, I'm the mental health navigator for the district, and we have 2 school nurses. All right. Is this you, Nikki? This is still me. Okay. First section, belonging and support. So the Youth Risk Behavior Survey not only talks about sort of like adverse things and what's going wrong and asks questions about risky behavior, they also ask questions about protective behavior. What are some good things that are going on with youth? So the main things I want you to see in this first slide, along with the belonging information, is just sort of how I've set up the slides, right? So in these slides, and this one does not have my highlights, but that's okay. The bolded number here is 2023, Marshfield High School 2023. This one's 2021, this one's 2019, right? So 19, 21, 23. So that's Marshfield. Those are those orange colors. The light blue is Wood County, and the dark blue is Wisconsin. So then you can see how we compare with people around us and with the state, right? So this first question, have at least one supportive adult besides a parent. 84% of our kids say that that's true. It's down a little bit from pre-COVID. That is one of these areas that we're trying to work on because we did notice that there was a drop in that during COVID years because of sort of how the system was set up at school. Participated in school activities, that's a very protective factor. We have pretty good numbers of that, 64% of our kids. And if you think about that, 64%, about 1,000 kids took the survey, a little bit under 924. But because I like math easy, I'll say about 1,000 kids took the survey. That means about 640 kids are participating in some extracurricular activity, which is really good, right? And then strongly agreed that they belong in school. So those are all good numbers, and those are ones we want to grow as well, because if we can build some of those protective factors, that is super helpful for kids. Oh, I apologize, because on this, it looks different than on mine, but that's okay. That's just for us to know. So this is have at least one adult in school to talk to. 75% of our kids, but I did sort of put this out. So 9th graders, it's 65, 10th graders, it's 73, 11th and 12th graders, it's 83%. So obviously, as they're in the high school longer, they're building more and more relationships. And so it's not just a true 75 across the board. As you get to know people and those relationships are built. So by the time you leave, there's a really strong sense that you have adults that you can talk to at school. This is one of my most concerning numbers here. Most of the time, I always get emotional support when needed. That number's going down. I think that number is going down just partially because of society. It's going down, obviously, in Wood County and Wisconsin as well. So it's not just a Marshfield trend. It's one where we really want to get additional information on and see how we can help that. After the 2019 survey, we did a focus group with students and asked them. This is when it was at 31, and I was concerned about it being at 31. We asked the students, and their main answer was, yeah, people freak out when we try to get emotional support. And so that's never any fun. So we would prefer not to, or we go onto the internet and we do all these things. So it is one of the reasons why this educational series got formed, because the kids were saying, our parents freak out and the adults freak out. So we need them to understand our mental health stuff better. So this is a nice area where we can do some things, but we have to do more of those kinds of things. Okay, then the other thing that I did was, you'll see at the end, we look at some at-risk populations. So the Youth Risk Behavior Survey allows us to look at some specific populations, and they pull out the information, and so we can look at different categories. So this one is the belonging category, right? So the general population, 63% say they feel like they belong. I'd like that to be bigger, but that's not a horrible number, right? 63%. Kids who are food insecure. So there's a question on the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that asks, in the last 30 days, has there been a time that you've been hungry because there's no food available in your household to eat? So it's a very specific question, not is there food that you like? Is there food available? I don't know how they're answering it, but about 16% of our students said that they were food insecure. So that's 160 kids in the high school. So out of those 160 kids, this is measuring that their sense of belonging is less than some of the other kids, than the general population. And you'll see that throughout. We picked Hispanic. That is the highest non-white population in Marshfield High School. At Wood County, it's 8% of the population. I'm going to guess Marshfield's maybe just a little bit lower than that. LGBT, and they don't ask Q's, so those are the correct letters for what they asked for. They have a very low sense of belonging. That's about 12% of our population. 12% answered yes, that they identified in one of those groups, so that's about 120 kids at the high school. Self-reported low grades, that's D's or E's. So kids who are getting D's or E's feel very much like they don't belong. This is not causal. This is not they get low grades, therefore they don't belong, or they don't belong and therefore they get low grades. It just is two things that exist at one time. So there's no causal factors that are known in the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. We just know that. And this is one of our highest risk populations. And then special ed students, and that's a self-report special ed. So we didn't go through all the IEPs and pick kids out. That's, they self-select that they're special ed on the first behavior survey. Okay. So all of these, you'll see these at the end of each category, where we look at how they compare to the general population. Again, that helps us to make some decisions about programming or about who's most at risk, those kinds of things. Okay. And then here are some interventions and supports and responses that we have having to do with belonging and support, in addition to all those general ones. So promoting involvement in extracurriculars, and the Marshfield High School has been trying extra hard to do that. They have them posted in a different way during the orientations. They have a whole presentation about clubs and activities. And so trying, they still have work to do, but trying to get kids involved through promotion. They have some activity days that help kids feel more involved. They have the 8th graders come visit the high school so that they can start feeling some belonging before they even get there. There's a good number of academic supports as well. I just listed some of those. So they have reinstated the Academic Resource Center. There's personalized pathways, which is sort of like a school within our school to give some extra help for students. There's some credit recovery. There's the alternative high school. There's an online tutoring program, and the high school's been much more open to do some more hybrid kind of learning for kids who are really struggling. So we have access to some online classes that they can do in a different kind of way that we're allowing as well. We have 2 EL coaches, that's English language coaches. That's an evolving program as we have more and more population, especially Spanish-speaking population. We do some partnerships with 4-H Extension. Pathway Partners is sort of a career program that we run at the high school, so kids can get exposure to different careers. Again, that part of that belonging. Big Brothers, Big Sisters collaborations. And G-Safe Student Group is, it used to be GSA, Gay Straight Alliance, and now it's Gender Safe Student Group, I think is what they're calling it, but they call it G-Safe. So it's a student club that is in existence for those students. Okay. All right. And everyone, this is Nikki. She's had a little harrowing experience getting here, but now she's here. So if you'd like to say anything about yourself, Nikki, please feel free.
Sure. I apologize for my lateness. Always hear about the trains in Wood County, but today there's no train and it just wasn't moving for 15 minutes. So we all turned around and took a different route. So that is why I'm late. But my name is Nikki Luft. I work for the Wood County Health Department. I'm the epidemiologist. Big word for basically do data stuff. I've been there about 5 years now, and the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is something that I work on. We do get a full county report too, so Joanne probably share a little bit about this, but each school can get their own report, and then also the full county. So I'm going to share a little bit about this today too. So this section is on trauma and adversity. So some of the questions we pulled out here, this first one is kids who sleep 8 or more hours per night. It's gone down a little bit over the last couple of years, but nothing significant. Kids who've lived in 4 or more residences, that's a little bit lower for Marshfield.
They're all percentages.
Oh, yes. Everything throughout the whole throughout the whole presentation is percentages. And then the one at the far side, Joanne did touch on this already, but kids who experience hunger due to lack of food at home in the last 30 days. It's been consistently 16% in Marshfield over the last 3 YRBSs, which is a little bit lower than the county overall. And we don't have the state data for this one yet. They are working on updating that number for this last cycle. Like Joanne said, we've had some visual issues here, so apologies for that. But this is the composite measure for violence. So there's a whole list of questions that relate to dating violence. So this is a composite measure of people who responded yes to any of those questions. And you can see it's 17% overall for the general population, but when you look at it by male or female, males said 8% that they have experienced it, where females to 25%. So a really big difference if we look at that. So it's nice to have this data broken down by the different subpopulations, so that sometimes it might just look like, oh, okay, that's like, okay, same as Wood County, like maybe we don't need any intervention there. But if you look a little bit deeper, you can see, let's focus on females here because they're experiencing it a lot higher percentage than males. And then the other question on there is kids who answered yes to either being bullied electronically or at school. And that's about 26% this year, which is similar to the county and the state, but did increase from 2021.
Just to mention about 2021, the bullying data in particular, we saw that sort of dip and then go back up to about the same as it was before. We really believe that that dip had to do with COVID. For those of you who worked in the school, the kids just weren't together as much. So the high school, they came like every 4 days. If you are only in school every 4 days with a quarter of the students, then you're not going to have as much bullying problems. And this was taken, that 21 data was in October of 21. So the kids had only been in school for about 6 weeks with everybody back full time when the 2021 data was taken. So some of the violence questions, especially the bullying questions, were much lower. And we believe it was just because kids weren't around each other as much because of the COVID precautions.
So then when you look at the subpopulations, break it down a little bit more, the YRBS calls it at-risk populations, but you can see general population, when you look at the bullying, we get 26%, but it's much higher when you look at it broken down among the different subpopulations, highest being the LGBT students, next food insecure.
So food insecure, in my mind, it says food insecure, but really we're talking about kids who are much more in poverty. So it's a socioeconomic status indicator. So our poor population are also the kids who have that risk factor.
This one is the violence question, dating violence. So again, we're seeing similar trends when you break it down into those subpopulations, much higher than the general population, and it follows that same trend where LGBT is the highest, with the food insecure students being next. And I will say for this one and the previous question, students who identify as Hispanic are pretty similar to the general population compared to the other subpopulations. So some of the interventions responses here, there is all staff training, all staff in the district around trauma, different trust relationship training. There's a lot of collaborations with community partners. United Way in Marshfield does a nutrition on weekends program for kiddos to get food on weekends. There's the Personal Development Center, Marshfield Clinic Child Advocacy Center, and Wood County Human Services. There's also specific support for homeless students. And Joanne, do you want to share what exactly homeless can mean? Because I know we think of
so
homeless.
McKinney-Vento is the law that has to do with homeless students in education. And when we frequently think about homeless, we think people on the street, but the definition is really much broader. So people who are in a hotel or motel because they can't afford or can't get into a regular housing would be counted as homeless. People who are doubled up, that's the majority of our population, which is living with family or friends because they can't afford their own housing. Not because they're taking care of their mom, but because they can't afford their own housing. That's counted. In the spring, in the summertime, in the fall, we have people who live in campers or in campsites, that's also counted. And you can also count people who live in subpar housing. So if they don't have electricity or they're living in a 1-bedroom and they have 6 kids, so if everybody doesn't have their own bed, that can be counted. And really the law is intended for the school to provide some supports to help them stay stable so they can move out of that situation. So the school provides free lunches and meals for them. So they're automatic free and reduced meals. We provide them busing or transportation within our school district, and we waive school fees if that's their situation. And then the social workers work to provide other case management kind of services and help them with community resources related to that, because we know that that's it's a hard situation for students to learn if they don't have a secure place to live at night.
And then the last one on here is a mental health consortium where the schools have partnerships and can get therapists come right into the school and work with people. So then the next section is substance use. For vaping, like this is one we hear a lot about with youth these days. Yeah, we've had a big drop though from 37% down to 27% from 2019 to 2023. However, still higher than we'd like. When you look at it by grades, it increases as you go up in grades. So ninth graders are having the lowest rates while seniors are the highest. And Marshfield is quite a bit lower than the state overall. And that's for ever trying vaping. The next one is if you used a vape in the last 30 days. So 14% there. Again, a drop from 2019, and similar to the state and county there.
And just for numbers, right? If we have about 1,000 kids taking the survey, that's 140 kids at the high school are vaping regularly. So that gives you a little perspective. 14 seems really low. Oh, 14, no big deal. But it's 140 students that are saying they're vaping regularly.
And then this last one, actually good to have a higher number. It's among students who vape, those who tried to quit in the past 12 months. So Marshfield has a much higher rate than the state for those who tried to quit.
Do we have data on youth who have successfully quit?
No, that's not part of this.
Right.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, unfortunately.
No, because as Ariel knows, it's really difficult to quit. I mean, I like to tell the story that my mom smoked from the time, not vaping, but she smoked from the time she was 12 till she was probably 50. But she didn't smoke, the first week of January every year because she tried to quit every year, and nicotine is just highly addictive. And so it's very difficult to quit.
I think there's a narrative out there that vaping is safer, and it's not. We don't know enough about it still, but we know nicotine is the addictive substance. I have a family member who just recently I'm not using tobacco anymore, just nicotine. It's still not good. So I think there's just not enough information out there for some people too. When we look at alcohol use, this has dropped. So 57% of students who ever had an alcoholic beverage, from 57% to 49% between 2019 and 2023. But still still similar to the county and the state. So I know you can't see that number probably very well, but it's 49%. And then that one also increases as you get older, which I think we would expect. And then the next one is among students who have drank alcohol, those who first tried it before they were 13, which is 34%. Huge increase from 2019, which is pretty wild to think about. When you think about it, in the 1,000 students, 340 students trying alcohol before 13 years old. And then those who drank alcohol in the last 30 days, 25%, which is a little bit higher than the county. And again, increases as you get older in grades. And the binge drink in the last 30 days, that it has remained consistent at 10% over the last 3 cycles.
I think binge drink they define as either 4 or 5 drinks in a row.
It's a little bit different for males versus females, but yeah, it's
maybe
something like
girls
that.
are 5 and boys are 7 or something like that. But it's a certain that the question asks a very certain amount that you drink at a time.
What's the reasoning behind gender splitting that?
They do that at the definition, I believe, I don't know if it's from the CDC or a different organization, but it's that way with adults too. I think it has to do with the way that your body processes it. I think there's evidence of research out there that females can have like a lower, not necessarily lower tolerance, their body reacts a little bit different to
Yeah, they
it.
metabolize alcohol differently, and so for research purposes, binge drinking, they pick a different number based on the impact on your body.
Yeah. And that's by gender, not by like body mass index?
No, it's by gender.
Isn't it a certain enzyme that they lack?
Yeah, there's,
I mean,
if there's
it's-
biology behind it, I don't understand it fully.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. The next slide is on marijuana use. So students who ever use marijuana, 2023 is 18%, quite a bit lower than the state, but still not great. We've been about the same for the last 3 cycles there. Students who have tried marijuana, those who tried it before 13, 15%, and that's been increasing. And then students who use marijuana over the past 30 days, 9%, which is a little bit lower than the state and county again.
So one of the things about the marijuana questions on the youth risk behavior survey is they primarily talk about marijuana, where they don't talk about the hemp-derived products that are readily available in Marshfield. And so they haven't sort of got sophisticated enough to sort of ask separate questions about those. So some kids might say, I don't smoke weed, but maybe they have, tried Delta 9 or Delta 8 product, or even maybe we had a gummy that had something in it that had THC in it. So there's a definition issue and problem having to do with this particular question because it doesn't weed out the things that, no pun intended, the things that we need to know about that particular use. The high school students would probably say those numbers are low.
And it's all self-report. So yeah.
It's self-report, but I think when they've looked at those numbers in the past, they thought that was a low number.
So almost every single question, I think maybe every single question is, you can see the data broken down by the subpopulation. So we didn't pull out every single one for vaping, alcohol, and tobacco, and marijuana, but we decided to share vaping since that's been a really popular one lately. But the trends all were pretty similar among the other substances as well. So the bar on your left is students who've ever tried vaping, and then the right is those who've vaped in the last 30 days. So among the general population, we have 27% who have ever tried vaping. And when you look at students who self-reported the low grades, so those D's and F's, 64%. So a huge, huge difference there. So that's like one of those places where we can kind of break down the data a little bit more. Like maybe 27% doesn't sound that high to you, but if you look deeper, like, okay, let's focus some efforts on those students who are self-reporting those lower grades and see what it is that has those students trying vaping more often. And the next one after that is food insecure students at 44%. But still, even with that being like the next closest, there's still 20% difference between those students and the low grades. Then some of the interventions here, there's health and counseling curriculum within students, their daily curriculum. There's intervention guidelines for substance use. So when students are found using substances, guidance to follow. There's a lot of different diversion and education programs available. There is called MCLA, Marshfield and Columbus Leadership Alliance, along with MACY, Marshfield Area Coalition for Youth, lots of acronyms, that focus on substance use. There's also, Joanne's going to know more about this, but I just learned recently that the Marshfield area received grant funding for Drug-Free Communities grant. We've had that in the Southwood County area for a while, so it's federal grant funding to help with prevention around substance use. And now the north part of the county is going to have that as well, which is really exciting. I don't know if you have anything else to add about that.
Yeah, the Drug-Free Communities Grant is a primary prevention grant, which means it looks at systems as opposed to individual interventions. So there's education and awareness parts of the grant that you'll probably start noticing as we roll things out, some more education and awareness in our community. But then the primary prevention are things like looking at local conditions. So one of the things we looked at is vaping in the high school parking lot. Kids reported that there's some vaping in the high school parking lot. So we're going to look at interventions like getting the police department to do some drive-throughs during, whatever times, or setting up cameras or something to deter that kind of use. So it's these big efforts that are changing the local conditions as opposed to we're going to give Jimmy something to help him quit. We're doing those things already. This grant just doesn't cover those particular things. They look at big, broad stroke prevention in the whole community as opposed to individual interventions.
So it brings in a lot of resources, staff capacity, which is really exciting. And then we also have, out of the county health department, we have a community coalition called Impact, which focuses on substance use. And then there's also a bunch of resources on the school district of Marshfield's website. And we will have a list of resources that have links that you can follow if you're interested in any of this stuff. I'll hand it back to you.
All right. All right, I get mental health.
Go figure.
Okay, so if we look at mental health, they ask 6 primary mental health questions, and then we also did some additional modules in Marshfield with some additional questions. You'll see some slides up. These are 3 of the primary questions that they ask about mental health. Self-harm questions, questions about anxiety, and questions about sadness or hopelessness to that depression. And you will notice on each of them, I did the male-female breakdown because those numbers are so distinctly different, where females are reporting a lot more mental health issues than males are at the high school level, at least answering these questions. And these numbers are really high. I mean, 51%, so more than half of our kids are saying they have anxiety, which is startling. This helps us a little bit to try and figure out where we need to put some resources, but you'll also notice how close we are to county and state data. So we're really close to where everybody else is in the state, because mental health issues are not a Marshfield issue. They're not a Marshfield High School issue. They're not even a Wood County issue. They're not even really just a Wisconsin issue. It is, the whole United States. It's a national issue, mental health. Lots of reasons for it that we're not going to get into now, but it certainly is something we need to look at. Here is the most interesting slide. We did this extra module that asks about stress. So kids, 2 things that are really startling about this. Pre-COVID in 19, kids were stressed about school and not really stressed about friends or home. Post-COVID, it switched completely around where they're less stressed about school, more stressed about friends and home. I have no idea why that is, but I find it fascinating that that exists because it's a really stark shift, right? The other thing that I find super fascinating is I pulled the male-female on this, and stress, we'll look at friends and at home, and look at it's completely switched from the other slide that I just showed about anxiety. So in my mind, this may be a semantics issue where females are saying, yes, I'm anxious. Males are saying, yes, I'm stressed. They may be feeling the exact same thing, but they're labeling it differently. That's really important because instead of us saying, oh, this is females have all the mental health issues, we're probably going to need to say, all the kids are having mental health issues. They're calling it something different, but it impacts everybody about the same level, if you really look at it. So that's part of what I thought was super interesting about this particular information. The second 3 questions of the 6 mental health composite questions, not including those stress questions, have to do with suicide. And it asks 3 questions. Have you considered suicide in the last year? Have you made a plan about suicide in the last year? Or have you attempted suicide in the last year? And again, I'm going to remind you, there's about 1,000 kids that took the survey. And so if these are percentages, that's 80 students who say they had attempted made a suicide attempt in the last 12 months. Because 8 looks like a small number, but 80 is not a small number. So that's something for us to really think about. So then they do a composite, which is the six mental health questions. So self-harm, anxiety, depression, and the 3 suicide questions. So this number does not include those males who said that they were stressed. And it's still a really high percent. And you look at females, it's 72% are identifying some mental health issues. So mental health continues, and it's continuing to grow. But these are the exact same trends that we see in the county and the state as well. So it's not like Marshfield's growing on its own and everybody's staying static. Marshfield's following the same trends that the county is following and that the state is following. And then our at-risk populations, this shrunk it down a little bit. I wish these were down here so that you could see, but pay attention to the numbers. Just because these look like they're tiny, they aren't. Because if you see the general population is 58%, but look where LGBT is. It's at 84. Look at low-grade kids, 84%. So 84% of the kids who identify and 84% of the kids who are saying they have low grades are also struggling with mental health issues. So that's, again, those 6 indicators. Again, that's not counting that stress indicator. It's just those 6. So the at-risk populations are particularly at risk for mental health issues. These are the strongest and biggest numbers out of all of these that we're looking at. I could have made a whole other sheet of this too. We do a lot having to do with mental health. It feels sometimes that we're swimming upstream or banging our head against the wall, whichever analogy you want to use. We've had some suicide prevention and response guidelines. We review it like every 2 or 3 years. So we have teams that work on that together. So we have a clear guideline of what we need to do if someone's identified or how do we do prevention. We train all of our staff in QPR, which is a suicide prevention training, and we train our students in health class in QPR. So that happens in middle school and then in once in high school. And we're looking at adding another QPR training for 11th or 12th graders because most kids take health in 9th or 10th grade. And we really want to catch them a little bit later as well as they're sort of leaving the fold to have that information about suicide prevention. We've been doing some DBT, which is a really well evidence-based model for building coping skills and engaging in positive relationships and those kinds of things. We're doing a universal screener, and universal sounds funny. The best is a mental health screener. We're not doing it universally. We're doing it in 1st grade, 3rd grade, 5th, 7th, 9th, and 10th grade. And we just finished that, so we're currently looking at that data. Essentially, kids take that on their own, except for 1st graders. That's a teacher report. And then there's indicators on it, and kids who score high on indicators, we then do some personal contact with them and their parents and their teachers, and then make a decision about some additional interventions if needed, based on what their scores were. We do the school-based mental health, where we have the therapists come into the schools, and as you see here, there's direct referrals, meaning the counselors, when they talk to a kid, the school counselors, when they talk to a kid, can then get a hold of their parents and say, Joey is interested in doing some therapy. I think this could be useful for them, and we can make a direct referral to an agency so that process happens quicker and easier, and then the therapy can happen in our school buildings, which makes things happen faster too. And then some of these other things that we have talked about, training our MCLA group that does awareness and education issues. And there's a whole lot of mental health information on our district website.
Do you know what the average wait time is for that mental health counseling in schools?
It depends entirely on which school it is.
Okay.
and what time of year it is. So all of those. So like right now at the high school, so we're just going to talk about high school. If somebody made a referral today, they would be seen easily within the next couple of weeks.
Okay, it's not bad.
But at some point, we're going to reach capacity, and then it's going to be a wait until a therapist has an opening. And so that's just how it is, and that's how it is in the community right now too. We're just adding 2 new therapy agencies. So right now we work with Children's Wisconsin, Marriage and Family, an agency called Absolute Impact, which is really Tiffany Kula. And if anybody knows Tiffany, she used to work for Marriage and Family, and she works for PBC, and she used to work for the Marshfield Clinic. So lots of people know her. She has her own LLC. She does some stuff for us. And we're going to add, we just added this summer a place called Tender Care Counseling. So it's a woman who has her own LLC, and she's doing work at Washington Elementary. And then we're going to add, the board is going to approve or not approve. I think they're going to approve the MOU for Vivint counseling, and they're going to give us an extra counselor for at the middle school and at Grant Elementary School. So what we found is as we add capacity, therapist capacity, we fill the slots because the need is there. Yeah. So, and we don't run our consortia where it's anybody who wants therapy gets therapy. People get into our consortia because they have some sort of barrier to treatment, meaning their parents can't get them there, they have a financial barrier, or there's a long waiting list in the community. That's a barrier as well. But if people want to go get therapy outpatient, we're not stopping them, and we encourage people to just do that as they need to. And we sort of, because capacity is an issue, we sort of reserve our spots for families or our students who have barriers to getting treatment otherwise.
What's the average like educational level of these counselors? Are they?
Oh, they're all master's level.
Okay.
So they all have to be licensed therapists.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're we have some LCSWs and some marriage and family counseling, LPC, whatever theirs is.
Yeah.
That's normally what we have.
Okay. And the last one is media use. I think is super interesting in this day and age. So this first one is about device use. First one is students who said they spend 3 or more hours per day on phone, Xbox, or their device, excluding schoolwork. You can see there's been a huge increase from 2019, and it's just steadily increasing up to 73% in 2023. And then on the other side is those who use their phone, Xbox, or other device after midnight on a school night in the past 7 days. That's about 45%. And I find this one really interesting when you look at the mental health trends too. There's a lot of research out there that shows kind of the connection between the two. I just was reading a book called The Anxious Generation, which is really interesting if you're interested in social media use and the wild mental health increases we've seen over the last decade or so. So really interesting stuff. And then the last question.
Thomas, did you have a question?
I was going to say, is there a correlation between the amount of sleep to gaming or whatever on any media source? Because when I was in the reservation, it was a big deal about social media and at home because parents said just do whatever, and they would be on their things until 3 a.m, then turn around and go to school, and they were behaviorally tired. And when that came up, that's why I was thinking, like, oh.
The Youth Risk Behavior Survey does not imply correlation. I mean, that's not what this data set is, but anecdotally, and even by PID report, when you have a conversation with a student, a couple different things. One is they're not getting enough sleep because not only is it media use, but leaving all their notifications on. The definite lack of sleep, even at the elementary level, I'm working at Grant a couple days a week now, and some of the kids who have the biggest behavior problems in conversations with the parents, they get up in the middle of the night and they get on the iPad So we have conversations about lock everything up at night so they can't get on different things. But I'm going to just say this as my own personal opinion. Adults have as much issues with social media and technology use as kids do. So it's really hard to regulate kid use when adults aren't very good at regulating their own use. That's not every adult, but it's not every kid either. And so take that for what it's worth. That's my opinion. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey doesn't say that, but that is certainly something that I think about.
Yeah, and my only additional comment would be in that book I mentioned, The Anxious Generation, they do talk a lot about the lack of sleep due to the increase in social media and device use. And we just know that sleep has a really big impact on everything else in kids' life. So yes, very interesting connections, but can't say for
In
sure.
the corner though, that added additional information.
Oh, yeah,
about
that little-
texting and emailing while driving. That's the percentage that do say they do that.
Yes, isn't that startling? I did add that because it's in a whole different section. It's in the driving section. There's a driving section as well. But texting and email while driving. And they only report 11th and 12th graders because that's the driving age, right? 11th and 12th graders report that, and 64%, 73%. And they don't even ask social media. Like, it doesn't say Snapchat. It specifically says texting or emailing. And there's lots of other things that kids do. So I'm guessing those are low numbers as well.
And it's in the last 30 days, not like last year or ever. Only the last 30 days.
Okay, I'm gonna use correlation avenue by using the state instead of just local. Is there a correlation between teenage deaths while driving or accidents caused that involve teenagers or other people or adults? Is there a percentage on that?
That's a really good question. And I work with the police department pretty closely with some of the Macy stuff, and I will ask them that question to see if they have some of that information, knowing that little piece of it. And then where are we with traffic fatalities or traffic accidents that are related to that, both in Marshfield and the state.
I mean, when you look at it, because what population is dying more of? It's the young people and the old people. I mean, I'm gonna say old people because,
We're not as good drivers because we were losing some of our ability to react quickly. I mean, that's what happens when people get old. I mean, that just is what happens. I wish it weren't. It's true.
That data is not available in the state YRBS, but
It's probably available someplace. So that's a really good question. So I'm gonna do some exploration for you on that.
I mean, because some areas of the state outlaw, I'm gonna say outlaw,
Right.
using phones or whatever, like in the Appleton area or the Green Bay area, if you are caught with your cell phone, even on your dash,
Yeah.
you can take.
Yeah.
No ifs, ands, or buts. Sorry.
The Michigan laws are like that too. You can't even touch your phone. If you're caught touching your phone while you're in your car, then you can get pulled over and fined.
Most of the East Coast is like that too now.
Yeah. Dixie?
That's what I was gonna ask about too, as far as like, when I first saw texting, like, how can you do that? I thought,
Kids
you
can
know
do
what,
it.
I do, but yeah, but I do it a lot of times, talk to text, and I have to quick look at did they come out? And then I think, no, this is bad, you shouldn't do this. But is that some of it that people are saying, yeah, I did text while I was driving, but you did it voice to?
This does not pull that information out again. That would be like doing some sort of follow-up conversation with yeah. I think there's one more media slide that maybe we want to look at.
That's interesting.
also just want to throw in there. I lived in Appleton for 3-4 years, and I had no idea that law existed. So I also how much that's actually enforced, or how much people know about it.
Isn't it here though too? You're not supposed to be on your phone?
I don't think anywhere really. I think you can get. Yeah, I thought so too.
And I'm not even good with that. I can't type standing up, let alone driving. But I don't hesitate to put my phone in the cup holder and have a conversation on speakerphone. So I use my phone. It's an efficiency kind of thing. That's probably not good either. But that's how the world works. So.
And then speaking of that, then you also see police officers doing the same thing.
Again, it's that we're looking at youth numbers, but especially when you're thinking about social media and how we use technology, adults are having the same kinds of issues that teens are having because this is all new to everybody and we haven't figured out the way to be safe with it. So this is a brand new question.
Yep, this is a new question in 2023, so that's why you don't see anything for 2021. So this very small one here is those who don't use social media at all. The next one is using social media at least once a month, use social media daily, and use social media very frequently, at least once per hour. And this here, it's all pretty similar, county, state, local level. And I will say at the county level, we actually see big differences here between male and female use. That female use is a lot higher. But when you look at it at the Marshfield level, that doesn't look that way. So that's an interesting difference.
Interesting. And I will tell you that, so I showed this at Vision Council and several people at United Way today, and several people talked a lot about how are you asking what social media is? Because kids might define that very different, and that's a changing landscape by the day. So she was talking about the fact that Snapchat is officially a social media platform, but lots of kids use it for communication. So they don't think about it as social media. They think about it as like a messenger app. And so how did they answer this compared to their actual use? We don't know. We'll have to ask some kids about that. But they thought that that last number in particular was probably lower and that it's really closer to that 80 and 94% of regular use. So.
Got one comparison where there's such a low number, 6%.
Yeah, not at all. That don't use it at all.
They don't have money to have.
Maybe. That's right.
It'd be interesting to see if they use Discord. Because, like, my son has no idea how to contact his friends unless they use Discord.
Right. So
They don't even use their telephone to make phone calls.
right. So like
So-
what are you counting as social media? What are you
Mhm.
counting as a communication device?
Yep.
And because that landscape is constantly changing, that's going to be a hard one to get real data on. But those numbers are really startling and large, even as they are. And they're probably going to be bigger.
This last slide is just some of the initiatives that exist throughout the county. We've talked about a lot of them already throughout the presentation, but I included a bunch of links here. Out of the health department, it's a partnership between the health department, Aspirus, Riverview Hospital, and Marshfield Clinic. It's called Healthy People Wood County. It's a large community coalition where we have to conduct a community health assessment and community health improvement plan every 3 years per different laws. And that's where we look at a bunch of different data and see where there's areas to improve the county in relationship to health and maybe where we're doing well on some things. So the YRBS data is just a small part of that. We just published the most recent report in June. It's on our website. It's like 100 pages, a ton of data if you're interested. And we are working on the community health improvement plan right now, which is basically an action plan for how we are going to address those top priorities over the next 3 years. The top priorities that were identified for Wood County are substance use, mental health, no surprise, financial security, housing and transportation, and access to care, which includes oral health. And then I already mentioned we have the Impact Community Coalition, which focuses on substance use. They have a really great Google map that has a lot of different harm reduction resources on there. Three Bridges Recovery is a really great organization with different support groups, different all kinds of different resources for substance use, mental health. Nicotine Prevention Alliance of Central Wisconsin is specifically for tobacco and vaping. The PATCH program is called Providers and Teens Communicating for Health. Those are specifically youth within different high schools that are working on health-related things out of the county. Wood County Youth Justice Services is out of the Human Services or Human Services Department. We have farmers market vouchers for different populations. There's 2 different bike share programs in the county, one here in Marshfield. I believe they're put away for the year now, but they're usually out from spring to fall. We have community health workers who work within, like specifically within the community. And there's our health department website. Extension Wood County is another really great resource, and United Way. So, like I said, we'll have a resources page with all these links that you can visit if you're interested.
That particular sheet and all of the other links, when I send out my student services newsletter, that's going to reflect all of this. All the links will be live, so all parents in the school district and all staff in the school district will get that. And if somebody else is interested, I certainly can send. I'll send it out to some AC folks too. Any questions that you guys have? You did a great job asking questions along the way, so we appreciate that.
And like I said, there's a county report. You can view it online on the state website. Like over 200 pages, but I'm putting together a county level one too that pulls out some of the interesting things, shows some trends over the years, but it's specific to Wood County, so the county as a whole, not just Marshfield. But that's another report that'll be out there if you're interested in
And
that.
not this PowerPoint, but I'm doing a presentation to the school board tomorrow night, and that presentation is much more extensive than this one. Will be on the district website probably in December. So that would be something that if you want, any parent, any person can go on and see this, a very similar presentation to this presentation on our district website. You can go on right now and see the 21 one. That's still out as well. So we update that every time we do the youth recruiter service so that the information here is available to everyone. Thank you everyone for coming. We will not have a Let's Keep Talking in December. And the next one will be in January. And our friend Ariel is going to be talking about addiction science and how that impacts youth. So we look forward to having Ariel come and talk with us next in January.
That could tie in with prediction.
Absolutely. Yes. So thank you all for coming. If you did not sign in, can you please sign in before you leave? Thank you.
Oh, I'm so surprised.
No,
I
it's
left
okay. It's so funny because
5:46 arrival time, and then I was
you
like,
were here, and I'm like, and when it hit 6 o'clock, I'm like, I should look at my phone to see. And my husband had texted me because I didn't bring any of my work stuff here. I just brought I have a work phone and a home phone. I brought my home phone, and my husband said, your work phone has been dinging. And somebody left a voicemail. And so he texted me that. So then I called him, and then I got your voicemail. So I said, type back to her that I got it.
okay, yeah.
So
I was
we're all
like,
good.
yeah.